I've said this once before and I'll say it again. Out of all the different medias of entertainment that exist out there isn't a single one that managed to be more immersive than video games. And I'm not talking about VR, you don't need to buy one of those super expensive headsets to enjoy this. Imagine you're playing Uncharted 3 and you reach that famous desert level. I'm telling you man, it could be the coldest day of the year. You could be living in the freaking North Pole playing PS3 with all the elves and Santa and Rudolph's there. Damn it, now I'm jealous. Anyway, no matter how cold it is in real life, this level is guaranteed to make you crave for some of that refreshing lemonade, know what I'm saying? But why? How come video games specifically can have such a powerful effect in people and most forms of entertainment cannot? To answer that, we first need to understand the fundamental difference between passive forms of entertainment, like movies, and active forms of entertainment, like video games. In a movie, story is always king. Makes sense, right? Since basically that's what a movie can offer you, an entertaining story. But that's not the case with video games. Although we love games with compelling stories, we don't necessarily need one. Just take a look at our favorite plumber over here. You load up any of his games and you already know that princess is gonna get kidnapped for the 30th time. And you know what? No one minds. Because in video games, the gameplay is king. As a result of you being the one in control, you end up getting much more immersed in it. The developers can, however, complement the gameplay with some other very important aspects of video games that push that immersion even further. And like, you read the title, you know what I'm talking about. Atmosphere. Creating a game's atmosphere is almost as important as creating compelling gameplay. It's like another layer of awesomeness in this delicious gaming cake. Let's take a look at atmosphere in video games. From what I can tell, the recipe for a great atmosphere is the combination of two things: art direction and sound design, together with a kick-ass soundtrack. Let's use an example to explore how these elements work together. Okay, if I had to pick from the top of my head the most atmospheric game I've ever played, like ever, I'd have to go with BioShock. This game is just an explosion of atmosphere and creativity. Seriously, if you think there's a game that's even more atmospheric than BioShock, dude, leave me a comment below cause I wanna play it. In BioShock, you explore the underwater city of Rapture. What once was a beautiful city made to accommodate the most brilliant minds in the world is now a decaying nightmare filled with scary monsters out to get you. Actually, if I could sum up the art style that they went for in one word, I think it would be decay. That's what the art direction makes you feel. As you wander through those narrow corridors and see the old neon signs and the antique architecture style from the 40s and 50s, you just know that this was once a beautiful place and that something awful must have happened. The game communicates to you that intrinsic bit of information without having to say a single word. And that's awesome. The old songs they picked gives the environment such an eerie feeling. The sound design as a whole has that effect actually. You feel like there's always something creepy waiting in the corner to get you. It tenses you up and just puts you in the right mood. And atmosphere also works the other way around. If you want to give the player the sense of safety and happiness, that can also be achieved by using the same elements. To use another perfect example, we could talk about, well, BioShock again. The third game surprised everyone by taking the players out of that underwater hellhole and gently placing us in Columbia, a city in the sky that's the complete opposite of Rapture. The buildings are all clean and fancy, there's blue skies all around, you hear birds singing, and everyone you walk by is like super friendly, which makes you think, hey, I want to live in this place. Of course, the game is just tricking you into thinking that this place is paradise, when in reality, it's just like Rapture. It may not look like it at first, but Columbia is also inhabited by evil creatures. The only difference is that in the first one, there were disfigured monsters that ate little girls up for dinner, and in this one, they're racists. So, you know, it kinda evens out. But the point is, by the time you realize that Columbia isn't the place you thought it was, it's already too late. The beautiful art direction and the jolly soundtrack already fooled you up to that point. But of course, that's only the tip of the metaphorical iceberg when it comes to atmosphere. Oh Jesus, is it an iceberg or a cake? I really gotta get my analogies sorted out. I feel like the two main uses of atmosphere is to surround you in the game's environment or to make you feel a specific emotion. When crafting a game like LA Noire that puts you in the shoes of a police detective in the 1940s, there's no doubt in my mind that a lot of time and effort of the developers went into researching the time period that the game was set in. You can see it in the houses, the clothes, the cars, and even in those retro title cards that showed up at the beginning of each chapter. Now combine that with the old detective movie scores and those satisfying sound effects that you hear when you interrogate someone.
I'm tired of your shtick, Morgan. Spill it!
And everything just comes together to give you that feeling that you are in a noir film. The same effect can be achieved with futuristic games. You see the clean and minimalistic design of the city in Mirror's Edge combined with that upbeat electronic music, and you know for sure you're in the future. The noises that Faith does while she's running around makes you feel more immersed as well. And yes, I do realize that praising the noises of a game might sound a little weird, but that just shows how sound design often gets overlooked. And you know what? That's a real shame. Mirror's Edge is about parkour, so the sound of her being out of breath, her shoes stepping in different types of terrain, the punches, the kicks, it all makes you feel more in sync with the character and the action that's happening, and that's atmosphere at its finest. Also, can't we just take a minute to praise how gorgeous this game is? And if the objective is to convey a specific emotion, this can also be achieved with atmosphere. Firewatch, Journey, and Shadow of the Colossus all manage to give us that feeling of loneliness in very distinct ways. Creating empty spaces for you to explore, making you feel tiny in comparison to an immense location, or using melancholic soundtracks to set up the vibe are all great ways to create the perfect atmosphere for your game. But to tell the truth, I think there's one specific genre in which atmosphere shines the most. Survival horror video games rely more heavily on atmosphere than any other genre. Makes sense, right? If the game's objective is to make you feel scared, then it needs to do a hell of a good job in making you forget that you're sitting on your couch and actually believe for a second that you two are facing great danger. That's why the location of a horror game is one of its most important aspects. It needs to be real enough to transport the player into the game. The most famous franchise that was able to do this effectively has to be Silent Hill. Granted, the last few games weren't the best, but the original ones stand the test of time and managed to create a living, breathing, terrifying small town that still haunts the players to this day. In more recent years, a game that was able to do this very well was Alien Isolation. Oh my god, this game is the coolest. Not only the design of the spaceship is amazing with all that retro equipment that makes you feel like you're in an 80s sci-fi movie, but the constant feeling of threat is super well done here. Since the alien is always out to get you, every time you hear that distant sound of him crawling in the vents or walking around in the room while you hide in a locker, it basically tells you that nowhere is safe. And that shit's scary, my dude. Last but certainly not least, Resident Evil 7 also did an amazing job in creating a creepy environment. The Baker Mansion is not only a little nod to the original game, but it also gave a breath of fresh air to the franchise by confining you into a smaller space. Just like in Alien Isolation, you felt trapped, but in a rich environment with tons of stuff to explore. It's huge but small at the same time. I can't really put into words what I mean, you need to play it to experience for yourself. Like I said, in the case of video games, gameplay is always king. But it's really cool to know that developers can complement it with some other awesome tools at their disposal, and the atmosphere is one of them. For a video game to be able to surround you with its well-constructed world, well, I imagine it's really freaking hard. So I always like to stop and appreciate when they manage to do this. A great atmosphere can truly elevate your gaming experience to the next level. Of course, not every game needs to be quote-unquote atmospheric to be amazing, but it's nice to know that there are a lot of these gems out there for us to immerse ourselves into. With that being said, if you know any really cool game with great atmosphere, feel free to tell me in the comments below. I always love to get new game recommendations. Also, please leave a like if you enjoyed and consider subscribing if you want to hear more about what's on my mind. Okay, have a great day.